Hi, everyone, and welcome to Greece Public Library's Book Break. I am Kirstra. I'm one of the librarians here. I moderate our Pints and Prose book discussion group. And as always, I am joined by my colleague, Claire.
Hey everybody, I'm Claire. I'm a librarian here and I do the historical fiction group on Facebook and also our As the Page Turns book group. So
awesome. And today we have a very special guest. We have Sharon with us today.
Hi, as was said, and yes, I'm a reference librarian here at Greece Library, and I tend to gravitate towards nonfiction books, and the two books that I'm going to talk about today are both nonfiction, so we shall see what we shall see.
Okay, awesome. Sharon, do you want to just jump right in and start, or do you want Claire to go first and kind of get the ball rolling?
Okay, well, Claire, why don't you lead us off?
All right.
Our fearless leader. Yeah,
absolutely.
Well, I'm going to start out with something kind of light and fluffy today. It's called Arsenic and Adobo, and it's by Mia Manasala. I hope I'm saying that right. It's a debut. It's a cozy mystery, which I don't normally read, but my daughter and I are both in the Book of the Month Club, and since this kind of looked like a foodie novel, we decided we would go for that because we both love to cook and we were hoping there were recipes involved, which there are some in the back. So our main character is Leah Magapago. Her life has turned into a dumpster fire. She lives in Chicago. Her boyfriend has just broken up with her. She's at loose ends. So she decides, of course, to move back home and help her aunt with her struggling family restaurant. This sounds very much like one of those Hallmark, movies kind of. So anyway, the trouble begins. She goes back and Aunt Rosie's restaurant, there's a very nasty food critic in town who happens to be Lila's old high school boyfriend. He comes into the restaurant, eats a full meal, and then promptly dies at the table. So there you go. The local police detective starts finding a lot of clues, all of which point towards Lila. She feels like she's been framed. So, of course, she's going to investigate this herself because who wouldn't, So she gets her best friend involved who works at the little coffee shop next door. There's a little bit of romance, possibly with either her coffee shop friend's brother, who ends up being her handsome attorney. And then also she meets a young new dentist in town. So, nothing really, everything is very light, no language, no, indelicate scenes or whatever. No real violence except for the man that, passes out on the table. So yeah, it was kind of a fun, fluffy read for me. It is also the first in the series, which so this book would qualify if you're doing our challenge on two fronts. It would be author of color and also first in the series. So yeah, it was kind of a fun change.
Nice. I gotta say, I love that cover. Can you show it again?
Oh yeah, the cover
is so colorful.
Yeah, that whoever did her cover art. Oh, and she has a little dachshund too. So yeah, she's got a little dog. So yeah.
Nice. Very cool.
All right, Sharon.
I'm on.
Yeah.
The book that I chose to read and talk about is called Driving Miss Norma, One Family's Journey Saying Yes to Living.
Oh, that looks adorable.
Yeah. Well, that's what drew me to the book. It's by Tim Bauerschmidt and Rami Little. So this was a gift from a family friend. She gave it to my sister who shared it with me. And, I read the inside flap and it talks about, Miss Norma's just been diagnosed with uterine cancer and they recommend that she does chemo, radiation, surgery. She just lost her husband. She's 90 years old. She's a widow. And so I said to my sister, it sounds like a downer. I just don't see myself wanting to read this. She says, no, go ahead. She says, I think you'll really enjoy it. And my mom's name was Norma. So I think that was a reason that the friend gave it to us. But, I looked at this picture on the cover and they just look so happy. And it's a biography. So, in the middle of the book, it has photos. I love photos.
Mhm.
That really helps me get to feel like a part of that. I really know the people. So anyway, the doctor offers her this option, and her son and daughter-in-law offer her the opportunity to go on a cross-country road trip with them in their 36-foot mobile home. Well, I guess it's a motor home perhaps, but she opts to go with them. So this book is a biography. We learn all about her from her past, which her son, of course, really didn't know anything about. And it's a travelogue, all these national parks and different places, and all the experiences that she ends up having. It's such an adventure. It's just so amazing that she's willing to embark on this journey at this point in her life, given everything that that's happened in her life just so recently. And of course, got the animal also there. So, yes, and they become quite close buddies naturally. Animals, of course, play such an important role. And the other thing was her daughter-in-law is a photographer, Claire.
Oh, wow.
Retired, however, but she takes the opportunity to take all these photos, kind of a memory of this journey. And she is able to use social media. She has a blog she puts up, and all of a sudden, next thing you know, all these followers. And this woman becomes quite famous. And as they go to these different towns and cities and parks and things, people know they're coming and they prepare things, they have a parade for her and everything.
Aw.
It was just one of those heartwarming stories. You just feel good, when you're reading it and afterwards. It was the right thing for them to do. And fortunately, she had that option. She could have stayed and undergone treatments and things like that. But wow, it was really, really a nice story.
I'm going to add that one to my list. There's just so many elements to that sounds so interesting,
Yeah. Well, that's what I liked about it. It had something for everybody, so to speak.
Absolutely. I remember buying that for the collection when it came out, and I feel like I remember it was quite popular.
I don't know. I looked, and I don't know that it's gone out really. So maybe now it will go out more. We'll see.
Okay. Yeah.
But yeah.
Okay. Nice. No, that does sound very sweet.
Yeah, it's just heartwarming, which I like that sort of thing.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
think we all could use a bit of that right now. So
I know, which is great because I am about to bring the room right back down.
oh, here comes Debbie Downer.
Because I have a little bit of a theme for my two books today. And my my theme is the plague.
Oh, Kirstra.
Oh,
I know. But I actually read two really excellent books recently that both, I don't want to say revolved around the plague, but were historical fiction having to do with the plague. And I liked them both. And I figured, well, let's just talk about them both, get all of our downers at once. So the first one I'm going to talk about is Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell. And this one, so there's actually like a little subtitle, which is A Novel of the Plague. But this one, there's plague in it, but it's really kind of secondary to most of the book. So Hamnet is the story of William Shakespeare's son, Hamnet, who died of the plague, who we think maybe, and who was the inspiration for the play Hamlet that Shakespeare wrote later in his career, because apparently Hamnet and Hamlet were considered like interchangeable. They were the same name, basically, because you could do that then. Who knew? But it's really interesting because the whole story is the main character is Agnes, who is Shakespeare's wife. So the entirety of the story is set in Stratford upon Avon. And Shakespeare is almost kind of like this secondary character kind of over here. Like he's involved, obviously. He's married to the main character, but he's really he's an accessory. He's not like part of the main story, which I thought was very interesting. And in fact, the author never actually uses his name once in the entire book.
It is interesting.
Yeah, all of
Right?
the other characters, you have their names. So Agnes is our main character, but it's always like her husband or the tutor, because they meet when he's tutoring her younger brothers in Latin, which is apparently what Shakespeare did before he moved to London and started writing plays. So it's very funny. It's like this kind of intentional sidelining of who would be arguably like the most famous person. And I can see that he would kind of overwhelm the story. But our real story is about Agnes and her life and her children. And it's really quite lovely. It's very interesting. You get a lot of historical detail. There is an author's note at the end where she talks about like, what are the known facts and kind of where she has embellished or invented. But the whole book sort of came about because in all of Shakespeare's works, the plague is actually never mentioned. He never like wrote a play about the plague. Characters don't die of the plague. Like it's just kind of absent, which seems in some ways remarkable because the plague was really still a very strong force in England at the time he was working. And he had one son who died at the age of, I want to say like 11 or 12. And I believe there's no cause of death given. So the author just kind of started thinking, well, what if, Hamnet died of the plague, and that kind of, that's why Shakespeare never deals with it. It's kind of the elephant in the room. And that's why it never gets mentioned. So she just kind of took that and ran with it. And we get a whole book about these kind of side characters in William Shakespeare's life. So there's like the literary angle, which I thought was interesting. But also it's just historical fiction about a time period where you don't hear a lot about just like common people living their lives. So I really liked it. I thought it was very well written and just kind of an interesting angle on historical fiction. So.
Oh yeah, that sounds really interesting. I like historical fiction, and I definitely read that one.
Yeah, it was very good.
I like that different perspective, like you said, didn't mention Shakespeare to speak of at all in a way.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a nice take.
Yeah.
A female's perspective also.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
I think that one has been on a lot of lists and won some awards too.
Yeah.
And I've actually been to Stratford-on-Avon.
Have you?
Yeah, when I first got out of college, and it is such a beautiful little town, the thatched cottages and everything. And I wanted to visit, his house and pay pilgrimage, so to speak. So
yeah.
Well, I got to add that one. Now I'm adding both of yours to my list. Darn you. All right. Is it my turn again? All right. So here I am. I couldn't wait on the list, so I went out and bought it, which is shameful, but here I am. I might donate it to the collection. Northern Spy by Flynn Barry, which was, how I have a weakness for Reese and Jenna and all these celebrity book clubs. I just can't help myself. But this one is interesting because it's set in Northern Ireland. It doesn't really give you a time period, which kind of threw me off a bit, but because it seems like modern day when you're reading it, but it features two sisters, Tessa, who is a producer of the BBC and works in Belfast, and her sister Marion. So Tessa went to college at Trinity College in Dublin. Her mother, they actually grew up in like a small, almost like Catholic project in Belfast. So, kind of a rocky start to the family. Dad left to go find work in London and ended up being very wealthy and very successful, but just kind of leaving that first family behind and marrying someone else. So you have a lot of different storylines going of family here. But Tessa and her sister Marion are very close. Marion works as a paramedic on an ambulance. So as the troubles start escalating again with the IRA, she is drawn frequently to horrible scenes and has to deal with a lot. She's not married, whereas I should have taken better notes. Tessa was married, but is recently divorced. Unfortunately, got divorced while she was pregnant because her husband started having an affair. So she has a little 6-month-old son named Finn that both the sisters dote on. But this is Tessa's life. Having this child. So one night, as she's doing a news broadcast with a very prominent local politician, a story cuts in with an IRA robbery, possible shooting, and one of the people, as they're putting on their ski mask, is her sister Marion. So she is thrown into this mystery of, was Marion, because she had been on a trip, was she abducted? How did she get sucked into this IRA thing? She was a woman alone. So it starts like a spool unraveling of how Marion got involved. And then before you know it, she's kind of sucked Tessa in, and she's kind of battling with, is she a double agent? Like she says, she doesn't know what to believe because there's so many things. And unfortunately, it was interesting in the fact that you can see how someone, when they get involved with a group like this, they lure you with, oh, you're just going to be a courier, you're just going to do some messages and so forth. And then it ratchets up, and then you're asked to do something else and before you know it, you can't get out. So she's going through all this, and all she's thinking is, how am I going to protect my child? How am I going to protect my child from this? So it was very interesting from that respect. The only thing I didn't like about it is this author is not from Northern Ireland. She's from America. She went to Brown. So some of the like sayings and everything that sound typical, when I looked it up and was reading the Goodreads thing, they're like, it's fake. We don't say mom, we say mammy, and and it bugged me that I'm such a stickler for historical fiction. It bugged me that I couldn't pin down what time period. And there were a lot of other people that felt the same way. Like they were like, well, is this a fantasy? Because it seems modern day. And, but no answer is really given in that respect. So darn you, Flynn Barry. But this is, I believe, her third book. She won the Edgar Award for her debut, which was Under the Harrow, which was kind of a mystery thriller. But she definitely seems to like writing in England and Ireland, but she's American. But she kind of has that kind of Irish look to her. So, yeah. But anyway, I devoured it in a day. So even though there were parts of it I didn't like, I couldn't stop reading. It's less than 300 pages, so you can blast through this if you're a good reader pretty quickly. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's going on my list. Americanized Irish language notwithstanding. Until you got to that part, I was like, well, yeah, sign me up. Yes.
Well, it's not enough to keep you from reading. It's like once you get involved, and even though parts of it, me, I have a problem with disbelief, and I start nitpicking at what could be real and not real. Even though I had a few of those issues, I still just was so sucked in to find out, what happened. So
nice.
I'll lend you my copy.
Excellent. I'll add it to the stack of books that you've lent me that I haven't read.
So it's like a mystery?
Kind of, yes. A lot of mystery, family secrets, which Kirstra knows I have a weakness for family secrets, But yeah, it's just, it's very suspenseful,
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I like how you mentioned that they start out as a courier and then, so much more can be asked of them as time goes on. That's disturbing. Of course, the part
that get you.
There's a quote that the IRA, it starts with a quote, they will forget about you, we won't. So.
Yeah. But it would bother me not knowing what time frame it is. I really need to know that.
I do too, because I'm kind of a stickler for all that. But even without that, like I said, I I just couldn't stop reading.
Yeah, well, you read it in a day. That's,
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's fast.
Nice.
So my second book is A Cat's Tale, and it is a history book.
I love that cover so much.
Yes, 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 absolutely. And, you know, I don't have a cat, never did have a cat. My sister has a cat.
You can
know.
have my cat. Sorry. Carry on.
Well, her cat's like a therapy cat, you know, so, but I read a review of it and it mentioned that it was written from the perspective of the cat. And this is Baba the Cat as dictated to Paul Houdanaris. Hope I'm not mispronouncing it. He has a PhD in art history, and it's obvious he really researched this book. And, you know, the documentation is in the back, and it's just so well written. I mean, it really sounds like if Baba the Cat could talk or write, that is exactly how Baba would write. I just was fascinated. Well, I like history, as I said. So it starts out, you know, it's really world history. It starts out from years ago, you know, and it covers Africa and Asia and Europe and the North America. Goes right on through, because I'm thinking, you know, how long can a book be? How much can you really say about the history of cats? What, you know, really? But
Sure.
but you know, it's over 200 pages. And so Baba and Baba's human, Paul, found out a lot. And I learned a lot too. It was interesting to me just how much cats through history have been both revered, almost deified,
Mhm.
and then at the opposite spectrum, how reviled they are and what people did, how they treated them. I just was shocked. I mean, even gets into the church and everything else in, you know, medieval times. And what I liked about it was they also talked about cats and their relationship with some of the famous people. And like, here's one quote with Lincoln. It says, so it was, you know, in the United States during Civil War times. Oh, there were a few cats who made real progress, including a pair of kittens named Tabby and Dixie, who made it all the way to the White House. They have been gifts from Secretary of State William Seward to Abraham Lincoln, who easily fell for their charms and even allowed Tabby to eat directly from the White House dining table. A kitten taking his fill in the lap of power. The president's wife, a notable stick in the mud, protested that his actions demeaned their station. But Honest Abe had a ready reply. If former President James Buchanan had been allowed to eat at the White House table, he argued, there was no reason a cat could. Mr. Lincoln indeed earned his reputation as the great emancipator in this case. Yeah, I had to read about James Buchanan. He was not a well-loved president.
No.
Huh.
Listed as one of the worst. But the other thing about this, photographer Claire, throughout the book, this cat, this Baba, this shelter cat, I thought it had to be photoshopped. Throughout the whole book, there are all these pictures of Baba in all these costumes.
Oh my!
It's incredible. It's like,
Oh my God.
how do you get a cat to pose like that? It's just amazing to me. Baba did. It's just, yeah. You know, so whether you want to read it or not, get
Oh
the
my God.
Oh,
for the photos.
my gosh.
That's
you know.
amazing.
Yeah, it really is. It is so amazing. There's my favorite picture because that has her little tongue sticking out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She looks like Cleopatra.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's exactly, yes, that's the that's the point. So yeah, it was really well written, and you can tell, you know, the author Paul is he has a PhD in art history. It's obvious, you know, he did his research at libraries, of course, where else? And as I said, he documents everything. There's even an index, acknowledgments for the photo credits, because he has, you know, he includes some, official artwork and things like that from
Okay.
before. So yeah, I mean, my sister felt it was a little too detailed, but like I say, you can do what you want with it. Read how much or not, or just look at the pictures, the photographs. But yeah, I thought of you, Claire. I'm thinking, wow, because Claire photographs so many nature scenes and bird things and that. And I'm thinking, wow, wouldn't you like the cat who would pose for you like that?
Oh, that would be awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Thank you. Now you've added 2 to my list,
I
Sharon.
know, that sounds awesome.
Yeah.
yeah, it's different for sure. Yeah.
Nice. Awesome. I really shouldn't have gone last today because I'm once again going to bring it back down with my second book about the plague. So my second one is A Year of Wonders by Geraldine Brooks. This is an older book. I have to actually check when it came out, 2001. So 20 years old. But I had never read it before. It's been kind of on my radar for a while, and I just picked it up. And it's so good. It's so good. So this is historical fiction set in 1666 in a little lead mining town in the north of England. And it's actually based on a true story of this town called Eyam. And what happened was plague came to the town in about that time in the 1660s. And it was kind of an isolated outbreak in this one little town. And the town did something quite remarkable, which was they quarantined themselves. They closed off the entire town for about a year so that the plague wouldn't spread from their town to the surrounding areas. And they had no one came in or out. They had like a drop set up at the edge of town where they would leave like a list of the supplies that they needed and money in like a little dish of vinegar to disinfect it. And people would bring them what they needed, and the local lord, like the whoever the nobleman was with like charge of the town, made a deal with them that he would provision them with, grain and other supplies if they would all stay put. Basically, he was like, I will feed you. We'll make sure that you all have provisions if you don't leave and spread the plague. And they did that for about a year, and they were able to actually contain the plague. So the outbreak did not pass into any of the surrounding areas, which is kind of amazing, given that they didn't even have germ theory at that time, right? So the main character in the novel is Anna. She is a young woman. She's her early 20s, and she's just like a regular kind of peasant girl. She is married to one of the lead miners. She works sort of keeping house for the rectory. So she works for the preacher and his wife. And occasionally will like go and help out at the big manor house in town. And the book is really her perspective of the year. So there is certainly a huge amount of tragedy. The plague is actually much more sort of present and like looming over everything than it is in Hamnet. So this is the more plaguey of the two plague books. But it's also the story of how Anna kind of grows to meet the challenges that this year gives to her. So she starts learning about medicine and herbery, and she starts learning about midwifery because there's no one else. They can't get anyone to come in to help them, so they have to kind of help themselves. So it's really the story of how she grows from sort of this little mousy peasant girl to really quite a strong woman in her own right during this time by meeting the challenges that the year brings. And I just loved this book. The writing is very beautiful. I listened to this one on audio. and it's actually read by the author, which is always interesting. You know, you're getting sort of the interpretation that they want. And it's just a beautiful, beautiful book. There's some sad parts for sure, but it's also a very hopeful book, kind of on the face of it. And I really, really liked it.
And timely.
Mhm.
Very timely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
I like, as I said before, historical fiction.
Mhm.
That one just sounds so familiar to me. It sounds like something I did read. I don't know. I'm going to have to
Yeah.
get that book out again and refresh my memory. But the more you're talking about it, it's like, this just sounds really, really familiar to me.
Well, it's been around for a long time, so it's certainly
Yeah.
possible.
It might have been on that list of 100 books to read. Remember, like
Mm.
the PBS show? It sounds like
Oh,
something that would be a good book
probably.
discussion book too.
Mhm.
Right.
I'm making notes here.
I know I've been trying to get my group to read it, but I think it would do really well with Pints and Prose too, Claire, or historical fiction. Although I
Yeah.
don't know if it's on Hoopla.
Yeah,
Yeah, but yeah, either one.
I'll have to check.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Sharon, for joining us today.
Well, thanks for having me. It was a fun experience because you two make things fun. Yeah.
Aw.
I love watching your book talks, you know. And like I say, I got my sister involved and she's like, oh, they're just so funny. And,
Did you hear
well,
that?
that's what people want. People want humor, you know,
Yeah,
as well
absolutely.
as information. So, yeah.
Well, thanks so much for
Thank
joining
you.
us. It was great having you. Yeah.
Yes,
Thank you.
always fun to have a guest, and a new guest in particular. And maybe we can have you back another time.
I know.
That's
I liked
right.
both her
Yeah.
books a lot. So
Mhm. Absolutely.
Okay.
Cool. All
Plan
right.
on it. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you everyone for joining us today. We will be back at the beginning of May with our next book break. And until then, happy reading.